Good evening. This is the Boxwood Alliance monthly webinar. I'm Colin Sandler. I will be moderating today. We're a nonprofit organization. We're run totally by volunteers. We have a bunch of wonderful volunteers. Kitty Wincoop is sort of our ringleader. She's the one who was involved from the beginning. We have Leanna Walsh, and we have Carolyn Coney. We have, I know I'm going to leave somebody out, so this is probably a big mistake to go down this path. Myself, we have Desiree Lara, we have Linda O'Hanlon, and I apologize if I'm forgetting anybody else while I'm going through my list of people that work with us on a regular basis. Thank you. But we all work together to come up with these monthly webinars to educate seniors and their families, caregivers, about things that are available to you in the community. Theboxwood.org is our website, and we encourage you to go visit it. We do post the webinars from previous events on our website, and as well as a ton of information about resources is available to seniors and their families. Resources to help you with your, oh, Hamey, thank you, Leanna. Hamey Slingerland, my co-chair, I should know that, and I apologize for not giving you that information. So my name is Colin Sandler, and I am, like I said, I'm the one who usually moderates these webinars, but by no means am I the one who's in charge of all of the wonderful things that we do. We do have some people who sponsor our website, which means they do pay us a annual fee to be listed a little bit more prominently in our website, to have easier access for people to get to them. And it supports us. And that's really the reason why we try to get sponsors, is it helps support our programs and running our website and all the good things we do. So you'll see on my screen, there's a list of some of our supporting people: Life Inc. Pooled Trust, Conti Legal Services, West Fair Rides, the Chelsea at Greenberg, Drum Hill, Assisted Living Locators, Lara Medicaid Advisors, Medicaid Solutions, and the law firm of Tracy Ryman are here. And again, I apologize if I've missed anyone on our list. As we do get more people signing up to support us, I have to keep updating my page. So with that, I'm going to go on to our presentation today. Today, we're going to have Nancy Kessler from Memoirs Plus giving us a lovely presentation. So I'm going to let Nancy, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute, let Nancy give a little intro to herself while I get your PowerPoint up and running. So Nancy, you could take it away.
Great. Welcome, everyone. There's a lot of familiar names that I see here, and I do miss doing this presentation in person. It's much better when I can show the books, but I'll try my best to get through this. It's been very busy actually during this period, because my business is called Memoirs Plus, and I started it 7 years ago, and I help mostly very old seniors write their memoirs, and I get them in all different stages. So some people have already written a whole book. Some people need to start with interviews. So I can work from a lot of different angles, and I called my business Memoirs Plus because I like to do a lot of other things along the way. So I will explain some of those extra services that I do. But I'm really here to tell you because you're in the industry, about the services that I offer, because legacy is becoming more and more important over the years. So we can start on the first slide, and I'll right. So today we're talking about helping your clients tell their stories, and for future generations. And like I said, the name of the company is Memoirs Plus. My website, we can put that in the chat, it's memoirsplus.com. And I will start telling you about what I do. So let's go to the first slide after this one. So what we do is we put stories together with photographs in a beautiful hardbound book. And you'll be seeing some examples of the books here. They also can be digital books, so they're ebooks when they come out. This generation seems to enjoy a hard book, and even the grandchildren who we thought would just want digital books seem to want a hardcover book. So it is a nice presentation, and I do an intergenerational piece, so I'll go over all the details of what I do, and we'll have plenty of room for questions and answers. So the next slide, I want to talk about something Ken Dykewald, who's one of my idols. He did a presentation with Edward Jones a few months ago about the 4 pillars of retirement. And what he found was that when he asked older people what they wanted to pass on to their loved ones, 75% said that memories, values, and life lessons were more important than money, real estate, or assets. So it's pretty interesting. And if you go to the next slide, he asked the younger people what they wanted from the elders. You can switch to the next slide. And they actually wanted the same thing. They wanted the memoirs, and the lasting memoirs were much more important. So I think many of us saw an article a few years ago in the New York Times, which was titled, like, "Nobody wants your stuff. Your children do not want your stuff." And I am in the process of packing up my house that I've been in for 35 years, and I can tell you that's absolutely true. So what I've done for myself and for my clients is digitize a lot of the images, and that's one of the byproducts that happens as a result of this memoir, because all your family photographs get digitized, and then we can share those albums with other family members. So let's go to the next slide. So we all have these shoe boxes and photo albums and everything filled with, memorabilia, and we don't know what to do with it. It's just overwhelming at times to think, how are you going to digitize them or put them in order? So as people are telling their stories, I often use photographs as prompts, but I find that the books look much better when they're illustrated. So we take key photos to put into the book, but often there's more than we can fit into the book. So like I said, the family gets those photographs afterwards in a digital album. We can go to the next slide. And my premise is that everybody has a story to tell. I met a woman once that said, "I don't have anything exciting." And then I started talking to her, and she loved to cook. So we did a cookbook for her. People do not have to have spectacular lives to write their story. There's just so many, there's so much value in hearing the story directly from your grandparent. I wish I had some tapes of my grandmother telling funny stories. This woman here is showing her book to her grandchildren and great grandchild here. You'll see a little bit more of this woman in a while. And we can go to the next slide. So, often when I walk into houses, their tables are littered with photographs and all the images, and you have to sort through them because it's important to know who these people are and to label them for future generations. And that's very easy in a digital world to do that. Go to the next slide. So this woman on the right here was really my inspiration for the whole business. Her name was Mrs. Blanchet, and she lived next door to me. And she lived in this old Victorian house. And Mrs. Blanchet would give out butterscotch candies like right before dinner. So all the kids would ring her bell, grab the candy, and go. And I was drawn into her Victorian house, and I would listen to her stories about my suburban town in New Jersey being was really like a agricultural community in the 19th century, and she would tell me about that. I was always the kid that sat in the corner of the kitchen and listened to the adults talking, because of course you get the best stories in the kitchen, and then you learn to cook too. But I always loved collecting stories, and when I got through college, I became a museum curator, and I was specifically a curator for historical museums. So I was collecting stories at a young age, and when I started this business 7 years ago, it just all fell together. A lot of the skills that I have. In fact, I often tell people that I'm making an exhibit of their life in the books, and you'll see some examples of that maybe in the next slide. So we can move to the next one. Yeah, no, one before, the one before that. Yep, that one, perfect. So, you know, you can see some of the covers that I've done. Each book is very unique, so people often ask me what a price is, and I really have to go through the scope before I can give an estimate. But I can give you some feeling of what it would cost. So it's an expensive process because I interview the person for 15 to 20 hours. I really get to know them, and we can get a lot out of a story by spending that much time with the person. We can go to the next slide. So this is one of my clients. She's now 95, and she wrote about how she felt being the subject. And she says, I'm very excited about doing this book. I'm also embarrassed. So many pictures of me, it makes me feel funny realizing that the subject of what I write is me. Is that egotistical, over the top, talking about me? I had my doubts, and I'm still not sure. But doing it has reminded me of the life I've lived, the love I've loved, the learning, the talking, the listening, the joys, the sunrises and sunsets, the serious things that were not so really so serious, and the serious things that were serious. The bumps along the way, I remember the good stuff best. And I think, you know, that's a really interesting comment that she made, because a lot of people are embarrassed and think it's too egocentric to do a memoir about yourself. But it's also a way for us to honor the wisdom of our elders and not, I think a lot of people in their 90s feel invisible. And this is a way to honor somebody while they're alive. And, you know, it can have purpose later on, but it's really nice to see the face of the person when they open up their own book. So we can go to the next slide. I love this quote by Sir Kenneth Robinson. He says, every single life is different. Nobody has ever lived your life, and nobody else ever will. You are a unique moment in the whole of human history. So that's what I try to remind my clients, that, you know, it may be a simple story, but even the every person story has a lot of value to that individual and their future generations. So the next one, I have a lot of clients who have early stage or late stage dementia, and I found that doing photo albums with captions may be just exactly what the person needs. I even have some clients who are in the earlier stage, and they can help me write the book, which makes them feel very useful, and it's a good exercise. And then, you know, the books can become very handy as things progress with the disease. So I am working with a number of clients who have memory loss. And the next one is, so when I first started my business, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And somebody asked me to do the memoir of this remarkable woman, Germaine. And she was living in Greenwich, and her grandfather was a pasha. She grew up in Iran and Iraq, and her husband died when she was 40 years old. And she was running a Max Factor cosmetic business as a single woman, single mother of 2 children under Ayatollah Khomeini. So she had to get her children out very quickly of the country because he wanted them to go into the service at 8 years old. So she got them to Switzerland, and she started sending her money, bringing her money out of the country, and she did escape. She has had a remarkable story, really. I mean, she was on the plane when the Canadian hostages were freed. She was sitting right next to one of them, like from the movie Argo. And Germaine, we decided to call her memoir The First 90 Years. And right after she did this memoir, she fell. And after that, she only spoke in Arabic. So I felt so blessed to be able to get her story in English and hear it. And her family was very grateful. So we can do the next one. This is Martha. She just recently passed away of social isolation. She was at the Osborne and just really couldn't handle not going out every day. She's the founder of the company Dansk, the tableware company. And she's really had a very unusual story. She was from one of the wealthiest families in Budapest, and they made a deal with the Nazis in 1944. And she was able to go with 42 members of her family to an island on off of Portugal, and she was hanging out with Jaja Gabor and her family during World War II. So she didn't have the typical Holocaust survivor story. It was a very unusual angle, but a lovely woman. And her family really was very happy that she got the story done before she did pass away. Next one. So another thing that I do is teach memoir writing. Right now I'm teaching a lot of classes at the Scarsdale Adult School. I've taught at libraries and different locations, but I also offer coaching sessions for people who are getting ready to put their book together. The classroom setting is very good for others to hear stories because it spurs them on, and I give a number of prompts each week, about 10 prompts each week, so students have something to go by. And then the next one. This is my grandfather and grandmother in a bar in Havana, Cuba. So one thing that my family started doing was when we went on our beach vacation in the summer, we would take a whole suitcase full of old photographs, and we would go through them at night with my parents. So it gave the grandchildren a chance to ask questions about those photographs. It gave us the opportunity to label them. It's a great way to involve the whole family. And then they're, of course, digitized. So the next one is, this is Myra. So she was just in the New York Times recently because she got vaccinated in Brooklyn, and she started telling her story, and they wrote an article about her in the New York Times. So she's a Holocaust survivor, and we published her book on Amazon, and her daughter actually wrote almost the whole text. And she is 97 years old. A harrowing story, really upsetting story, but she's been telling it her whole life since it happened to her. And this picture here shows a family gathering before World War II, and I think there were only 2 survivors of that whole group. The next one, this is Connie, who was taking my class in Scarsdale, and she kept telling me she wasn't ready to finish it, but she is now 95. So we decided to do volume 1, and she's actually halfway through volume 2. So We did a family tree for her. I spoke to her recently. I really keep in touch with a lot of my clients because they become friends, and I like to make sure that they're okay. So I spoke to her recently, and she's been living with children for most of COVID. But she said to me the only difficulty she's having in life in general is that she can't put her password into the computer when when it asks for the password, she can't remember them. So that should be her only problem, right? And okay, we can go to the next one. This is Dottie. I call her my Boston matriarch. She had very elegant life in Boston. Her husband was slated to be an admiral in the Navy, and he was killed in a commercial plane crash. She is now 101 years old and doing very well. So the next one, these are just some of the covers of the books that I've done. Two of my clients looking at their books. The two clients here actually wrote their own books, and I just helped them publish it. But most of the ones that you see on the shelf, I have actually put together. I think we can go to the next slide. This is Gus. He was, the picture on the upper left is actually him at 85 years old, some kind of fantasy baseball game that he got to go to, and he's in a full squat. So in this case, the family called me up and wanted the book done very, very quickly. It was really like steroids, and I didn't know how big a job it was going to be. And I think that they must have known that he was ill because he died about a month after the book was published. But again, I feel good when I see them looking at the book, that he got to see it and he wrote it with me. So, even in his last days, he was able to get this book published. Next one. So I did some analysis of my clients and found that 60% are women, 30% men, 10% couples, 42% had lost a spouse. Most of my business comes from my website and networking, community outreach, some from referrals. And about 25% have passed away since their memoir was written. More than half were over the age of 90. The youngest one was 65 and the oldest one 103. So I thought that might be of interest to you. The Jersey girl picture that you see here is a woman who actually lives in Canada, and she was raised in New Jersey. She wrote the whole thing herself. She's in her early 80s. And from what I can tell, she has some memory loss now, so I'm glad that she was able to write it herself. And then here you can see a cookbook in aphorisms. So we had, a lot of recipes from this woman in here. And I think there's some more slides. Let me check. Okay. This was Edith on the right. She was she came up from Florida to visit her family, and they kind of didn't know what to do with her for a week. So I came every day and interviewed her, and she was really a pleasure. And then on the left is Sylvester, who was a Greek immigrant. So I have a lot of immigration stories. Some of them are everyday stories and some are more unusual. It just depends. But really, I find almost everybody I meet is fascinating. The next slide. I do gift certificates if people just don't know whether their recipient is going to be interested. I usually do them for Mother's Day or birthday or holidays. So those are available as well. And then the next slide, or just to review some of the benefits of leaving a legacy. First of all, the stories are collected and told in the first person, because I know when I go to tell a story that my mother told, it's never as good as she told it. Photographs and other family memorabilia are organized and labeled. genealogical information can be recorded in one place. The voice is recorded, and I can do video. And I've talked about honoring the subject while they're still alive. And while that happens, you also have materials for 85th birthday, or a celebration of life, or eulogy, other memorials. It's all gathered in one place. And I do really encourage the intergenerational piece. Often the grandchildren, sometimes the great grandchildren, have written letters. And every single book that I've done, the children and grandchildren hear stories that they never heard before. So even though somebody will say to me, I've heard these stories, I've heard these, they're always surprised by something. And the book is really something that is a keepsake, and there's supporting documents. Yes, we can order multiple copies. I've had people order 50. I've had people order 2, all sorts of things. Usually it's about 10 to 20 copies. And then there's the ebook that I talked about earlier. So I think that may be coming to the end. Yep. And I don't know, did I do one more slide, or is that it? Yep. Oh, good. I was hoping I had my website there somewhere. And I'm really available to answer any questions now. I don't know if people have.
So I will jump back in, and I'm going to leave this up for a minute.
Mhm.
And I'll try to also copy and paste that information into the chat for people.
Sure.
So I do have a few questions here. Did I stop the share, right? Okay. So I do have a few questions here. I have what will be done with slides, tape recordings of the elders? That's one question.
So the family can get files that are either photo files or audio files or visual files. So we can put them all into one big package. I can also put it onto a USB stick.
Great.
Right now, I think everything's okay in the cloud, but sometimes the family likes to have a backup, and you could really take the USB stick and put that in a safe deposit box or something like that.
That's a good idea, actually.
Mhm.
Okay, next question is, do you work with clients in Manhattan, and are you visiting people in their homes?
Oh, good question.
Yeah.
I do work with people in Manhattan. I have not been visiting people in their homes for the past year. I'm just a few days away from being fully clear of my second shot. So I will start to visit people in their homes, but I have found that my business model was based on social isolation. So when the pandemic hit, I was geared up to help them, and some families even came back to me and asked me to call mom or dad for like once a week, because they just needed help with keeping them occupied.
It's wonderful. The last question that I have here, and please, if you guys have any more questions, please write them down for us, is what is the cost range?
So it really varies, and I've had to work with this. I find that the older seniors who are hiring me directly get very frightened by a big number. The children can handle it a little bit better, but even that, then they get a little skittish. So um, the cost starts at 5,000. And that does not include the publication, because I don't know whether they want everything. I don't know whether they want 2 copies or 200 copies or 20 copies. So I do that separately. I would say an average memoir that's about 130 pages will end up costing the client 6 to 10,000. So it sounds very expensive, but when you think of the amount of time that goes into it, it's not.
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of work, I would imagine. So another question is, do you write obituaries?
I have written obituaries. I am open to doing that. Absolutely. Mhm.
Okay.
Like I said, I would rather write somebody's obituary when they're alive with them. And that's an exercise that I've been in groups that, somebody has said, write your own obituary. So it's something that can be kind of fun to do with the person rather than,
Right. Yeah,
right.
that's actually a great idea. More people should think about what they want. Well,
Sure.
what they want people to say and what people want to say might not be the same thing.
Actually, when Martha died, there were obituaries in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post because some of the artwork her family had accumulated had been stolen, and there's a lawsuit about it. And the reporters called me to do the to write the obituary. They were calling me to ask questions and fact check and things like that.
Okay, somebody has their hand raised, but I thought I answered her question, which was the email address, which is memoirsplus@gmail.com. And I wrote it, it's in the chat box,
Oh, good.
and I
Uh-huh.
answered it live as well.
Great.
And somebody did ask, I think you addressed this already, but I'm just going to read it anyway. Can multiple copies be ordered? I think you did address it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can order multiple copies, and the clients can order them years later. I mean, I've had clients that have said, I want a copy for my friend or my relative, and so they get them.
Another question is, when you mentioned doing classes, do the students do their own book with your guidance?
So the students start writing with my guidance, and then putting the book together is a separate issue. So they often will hire me separately to do that. Um, but I have now a number of people that have come to me with just books that they've written and they want it put together. So I can help in that direction as well.
That's actually an interesting idea, especially if somebody doesn't have the resources if they want to kind of piece it together.
Right.
They, yeah, they can kind of get the information together. That's a great
And
idea.
I didn't mention that I have a team of people that work behind me. So in the beginning, I did everything, and now I've had the luxury to hire proofreaders, copy editors, book designer. Um, I have a person who scans for me. So I have staff that helps me as well.
That's awesome. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. I want to thank you. I thought it was fabulous. I think it's something that you can't get back once they're gone.
Right.
I mean, we talk about that all the time. I've been trying to get my mother to write things down for years about her childhood. And, my husband's grandmother told us stories, but now the longer she's gone, the less we remember the stories, and they're not from the source. So I think it's a really an awesome service if people can avail themselves of it. So thank you so much for presenting. This is recorded, so this will go up on our website at some point in the near future. It takes us a couple of weeks to get it edited and get it out, but we will do that. And it does not look like anybody has any questions.
There's one more question coming in.
Okay, oops, yep, you're right. Is there a way to actually view one of your books, such as on Amazon, so one can view several pages of the book? That's a great question.
Yes. So you can see on Amazon, if you go look for Myra's book, which is called Strength, My Memoir by Myra Rosenblatt. You can see that one on Amazon. But if anyone is interested, I can send you a PDF of some of the books very easily. Or if you're local, I can try to drop one off to show you. I have more than enough copies